Yeah, that's right. I see you out there. I'm a fictional character, here to bring you into a fictional world of make-believe. I know what your ass is saying right now. It's been done before with Deadpool and Ferris Bueller. And you know what? So, I'm Anira. I got a games. What's up? It's like, but don't think I'm gonna be just sitting around announcing stories and shit like that. That ain't my thing. I'll be popping up and shit all the time. And you're gonna be like, oh, there you go right there. That's that guy. And guess what? I'm gonna wink at the camera like a 80s Eddie Murphy movie. Just think of me like Dungeon Master from like that cartoon back in the day. But I'm not lame and I'm not a gnome or whatever the fuck he was. Mercy. Okay, whatever. Alright. Game face. The name of today's story is What's in a Name by Granger. I surveyed the ash-colored landscape and looked back down at my map. According to the report, this section of the woods had inexplicably died, but not because of the eldritch conflagration caused by the Illithid's bombs. A prevailing sense of inevitable death permeated the area. According to a Curie Solhamar, this vale had been corrupted by spilled unicorn blood, and she asked me to investigate after sending a few magical items left behind by the perpetrators as well. I sensed the vitality of life had been drained, and as I approached the standing stones, I tossed a handful of grass seeds and intoned a druidic chant that would spur the grass to begin growing immediately. The grass sprouted up a crisp shade of green, but 30 seconds later, it faded to a sickly yellow tint that turned brown before it withered and died. Storm The name reverberated through the woods and sent a chill coursing down my spine. The phrase was mimicked by several successive echoes. I smiled despite myself. As a fae, I draw weird from strong emotions such as fear, even my own. Such an overt admission of weakness is usually ill-advised. It was an old name. My gaze is drawn to Mr. Raven, my longtime familiar who was accompanying me and just now landed on the skeletal branch of a dead tree. Was that you? My work will not be thwarted so easily, little storm crow. The voice that responded projected power that far exceeded Mr. Raven. Little? Mr. Raven had been co-opted by another in order to converse with me, and although I am thin-framed, I am also well over 7 feet tall and had heard my share of jibes about my height. I have not been considered little since my first half-century, I remark in a casual tone. You are a small bird in a large forest, Mr. Raven cawed. That is true. I nodded and looked up to see the sky and noted that the tops of trees disappeared into clouds, but they were sparse of leaf or pine needles, and a fog-like gloom had settled over the area. But who are you to be concerned with the flight of a sparrow? I looked back to Mr. Raven. I thought I was speaking with Alexarin Anara Datir Volharin the Storm Crow. What's in a name? My tone projected sarcasm that came perilously close to insolence, but it was a deflection. I was emphatically not in the habit of providing most of my true name, nor acknowledging such from strangers. Moments later, a dark smoke emanated from Mr. Raven that coalesced into a tall woman, over a head taller than me, with long black and white hair. Glowing red eyes peered from behind an expressionless porcelain mask. Her silken gown was dyed purple and midnight blue with swirls of jade green. Raven feathers adorned the collars and cuffs of her long sleeves. We had met before. She was the Morgan, whose name meant the Phantom Queen. She was the sovereign of Corvids and the guardian of the Crossroads. She was one of Everon's deities who claimed dominion over death and the transition state between life and whatever post-mortem existence that awaits each individual's soul. Your Majesty, I immediately curtsied, based on the pervasive sense of dread and at the first re-echo of Stormcrow. I suspected she had been the one who absconded Mr. Raven, but there were others who could do so. Archfey and even mortal spellcasters, notably powerful druids or wizards. Even some rangers were capable, so I was careful not to presume. I remained bowed, as it was courtly custom to wait and be recognized first. But the Morgan did not acknowledge me just yet. She was taking full advantage of my idiosyncrasies to size up my power. To those who knew how to look, I was swirling in magical energies, both innate and directed. I have protective spells to conceal or shield me from most divinations and mind control effects. I am also protected against harm from energies, esoteric and elemental. But I am also enhanced with the ability to read or speak any known language, see people or items shielded with invisibility or etherealness, improve speed, as well as an elaborate enchantment that would teleport me away if I am seriously harmed despite those protections. Did you anticipate a hostile encounter here, Stormcrow? Morgan inquired. Now recognized, I straighten, but keep my head lowered. Not hostile, but certainly unexpected, and I have learned it is best to be prepared for antagonistic responses, Your Majesty. As to what's in a name, the Morgan continued. Do you know why I named you Stormcrow? She looked poignantly at me, and I took a respectful pause before answering. I believe it was meant as a message to my mother, as well as a reminder to me of our first encounter, Your Majesty. I smiled brightly at the recollection, genuinely pleased by the memory. Naming you the Stormcrow in her presence was a message to her, that is true. She nodded casually. You had no knowledge of who I was that would differentiate me from any other traveler lost in the wilds. But as Vivifery's heir, you took it upon yourself to extend the precepts of hospitality and protected me with skill and determination that exceeded your age and experience, and welcomed my presence in your home. Under those same precepts of hospitality, I was obliged to give a gift to my hostess. You piqued my curiosity, so I gave you something that could be used as a pretext to look in on you from time to time. And I do so now. What meaning did you attribute to the name, and what did you do with it? Morgan asked. I contemplated the question for a brief moment. When you first bestowed it, I considered it an honor. Aside from my mother, my fairy godparents, and King Oberon, I had never before been acknowledged as anyone other than my mother's daughter. But the distinguished Phantom Queen, sovereign of Corvids and guardians of the crossroads between life and death, did. And furthermore, you gave me a name. Even then, I grasped the significance of names, and I knew that you typically took names. You did not give them. At the time, I thought it meant that eventually I would become larger, and more important because storm crows are larger than most other crows. Mother, however, forbade me from using the name you gave me in her hearing, and me being me, I obeyed her by using it only around people unlikely to encounter my mother, or who did not already know my relationship to her. I smiled once again, but when Aunt Rowena learned of it, she explained to me that weird reciprocity was also applicable to given names, which meant that if I used the name you gave me, I was giving death power over me, and that terrified me, so I stopped using it for a few years. But during my training at the cutting edge, I learned different sorts of power could be derived from a name. When I graduated, I studied and worked as a physician at Port Calverville for several years, as it afforded me the opportunity to assist teaching on occasion as well as travel.